My name is Susan DeYoung. I'm the chair of the Surprise Arts and Cultural Advisory Commission, and welcome to our very first lecture for the Arizona Humanities lecture series. I'd like to present to you Dr. Jay Cravath.
That's me.
And that's him.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to Susan. Thanks for that polite applause. I hope it's not polite later. Well, thank you to Susan and to the Arts and Culture Advisory Commission. What a great idea to bring arts and culture, humanities actually. I want to present to you my media specialist, since this particular program has a lot of moving parts. It's Dr. Dan Schilling. He's the retired director of the Arizona Humanities back when it was the Arizona Humanities Council, and he did a lot of good stuff back then. Now I come to you, and here's the disclaimer part. I come to you as a speaker with Arizona Humanities, Arizona Speaks program. Arizona Speaks connects Arizonans statewide with engaging, informative, stimulating humanities presentations. Arizona Humanities is a nonprofit organization, Arizona affiliate to the National Endowment for the Humanities, operated, of course, by the government. AH builds a just, and this is a quote, and civil society by creating opportunities to explore our shared human experiences through discussion, learning, and reflection. Support and learn more about AH by either speaking with me after the presentation or visiting AH online, azhumanities.org. They have a lot going on there. My media specialist will be reading actual quotes from journals, newspapers, and memoirs of the day. Honky Tonks, brothels and mining camps. I propose to take you on a short tour of the entertainment of old Arizona, especially that of the working class. Their haunts and occupations gave rise to all manner of ways to ease an otherwise hard Scrabble life. The venues in the title tend to gather round each other. I'll focus on this spirited cacophony of arts and hedonism. Honky Tonk, how onomatopoetic. The origin of honky tonk is unknown, but there are early references thanks to our newspapers. The Fort Worth Daily Gazette regarding a petition that the Honky Tonk Theater be reopened. It would have been the urban equivalent to a juke joint in the South, both catered to a lower class clientele of men. The New York Sun referenced the term honky tonk in 1900. The story was that the name came from the honking geese who led a group of cowboys astray from a variety show they were seeking. The most plausible explanation for honky was as a term for white people derived from bohunk, those of Bohemian or Czech descent. In the early 1900s, these were derogatory terms for Northern Europeans from Poland and Hungary. Robert Hendrickson, author of the Encyclopedia of Word and Phrase Origins, wrote that black workers in Chicago meatpacking plants picked up the term from white workers and began applying it indiscriminately to all Caucasians. Because Chicago at the time was a railroad hub, the insult spread far and wide. A lyric from the sheet music down in Honky Tonk Town explains the place that is underneath the ground where the fun is found. And by the way, before Dan starts this, these are from old wax cylinders at the turn of the last century that were made available and digitized. And so this is authentic stuff.
fiddlers play upon the jazz-bowl. It's called the town of Honky Tonks. It's the home of every clown. When you are feeling fit, we'll go there, and you'll meet everyone you know there. Bricks and claps and diplomats and maybe a couple of acrobats and everybody arena and everything is.
The Los Angeles Times of July 1929 reported
that the name originated on the Barbary Coast and was applied to the low dives which form so great a part of this notorious district. In these establishments, which were often enormous size, much liquor was dispensed at the tables which crowded the floor. An entertainment of doubtful quality was given on a stage at one end of the room.
the music in honky tonks in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries was ragtime, where the emphasis is syncopated rhythm, such as this on my guitar. Scott Joplin published the Maple Leaf Rag in 1899. He contracted to get a penny for every copy of sheet music sold. The first year, 400 copies. By 1909, 500,000. And here is a version with banjos. Let's talk about the milieu of the mining camp. Life in the mining camp was exciting, dangerous, dirty, and busy. When a claim was staked and it looked good, a town sprang up around it. In the case of Jerome and Bisbee, right on the sides of mountains. They began as tent cities, then came bricks and mortar. The miners made hovels, tents and cabins, though many just had a bedroll and a canvas cover. According to Frank Campton,
it didn't matter whether we had a roof over us, for we had our bedrolls and plenty of open space in the nearby desert.
Miners went from the dust of the mines to the dust of the streets. That is, when the mud didn't threaten to bog down the wagon wheels. During the height of the mine, though, the place bustled.
I naturally strolled around. There were a number of good stores, meat shops, bakeries, blacksmith shops, etc., but the gambling saloons were the terror of the town. Supplied with music, mirrors, pictures, every device was used to attract the young, induce them to gamble and drink. Some were hellholes. Most were more like men's clubs.
Working rock was extremely tedious and backbreaking. When you work hard, you tend to play hard. Let's talk about the civilized entertainment. At the outset of the camp, there were very few women. Once wives were attained or traveled to their husbands, they organized civilized entertainments. Most popular was the weekend dance. Women baked food and decorated the building where it would be held. Liquor was not allowed. Every female past kindergarten age danced every dance. Costume parties were big as well as holiday flings. Family music came to mining camps in the form of the brass band. The forts Lowell, Huachuca, Tucson, and Prescott all toured to promote patriotism. The Tempe Merchant, the Yuma Prison Band, and the 11th Infantry Band at Fort Whipple under the direction of Aquil LaGuardia entertained the citizenry. American Patrol March was especially popular. The band stage was often surrounded by grass, with parking behind to watch the proceedings from a buckboard. Successful miners began to demand more sophisticated entertainment to demonstrate their good taste, arriving with wealth. Jenny Robertson of Tombstone wrote that
music was of high class. There was much in private entertainment, the usual affairs to raise money for churches. One great event was the Martha Washington Tea Party, given in She Fine Hall. A minuet was danced as part of the entertainment. Colonial costumes were ordered from San Francisco for the men taking part. Hair was powdered and all details of a minuet of 20 parties carried out.
theater. Pinafore shows, operettas, repertory companies, and even a few Shakespeareans visited the half-dozen theaters of Tombstone, with Schieffelin Hall the most prominent. The little town also had amateur performing groups and a glee club.
Inside the halls, the good citizens danced the minuet in citified elegance.
The Elks Lodge, number 330, formed in Prescott, January of 1896. They decided to build an opera house, which was completed in 1905 and still stands today. For the opening act, the group chose to book Florence Roberts' troupe. Roberts was one of the prominent touring actresses at the time. They were really into melodrama. She drew big audiences wherever she went. A deal was struck and she acted the play Marta by the Spanish Catalan playwright Ángel Guimerá. $25 for the best seats, which was a huge amount at the time. And it was a big success. Dining. At Bisbee's Can Cafe,
the table was covered with oilcloth, spotted with droppings from candles stuck in a beer bottle. The cups and plates were thick, and spoons were of tin. There were no napkins, so here, my boy, you had better close your eyes tight, or you will see the men wiping their mustaches on the backs of their hands as they push away from the table.
Jerome's Bartlett Hotel fed the Copper Camp's visitors. The Montana, Jerome, and Hampton House fed the miners. At Prescott, Ben Butler's Chop House offered
all the delicacies of the home, San Francisco and Kansas City markets.
In the town of Tombstone, 1888, restaurants catered to refined tastes. Parsons, a local diarist, kind of blogger of the time, often went for a chop at a restaurant with a Chinese owner and chef. The Rockaway Oyster House, the Russ House, and the Grand Hotel offered gourmet dinners.
Miss Nellie Cashman operated the Russ House, providing the city's most discerning appetites at 50 cents a meal.
This was the disposable income that these miners had gotten from their grub stakes. Double Jack Drilling Contest. No event of the day created more interest than the rock drilling contest. This was the livelihood of the myriad miners who worked the claims, and everybody wanted to see the best. This craft was, of course, for planting dynamite to move rock.
The crowd surged so close to the drillers that they had to be repeatedly requested to move. They climbed onto the scaffold of the courthouse in such numbers that they had to be warned. Many left because they could not see, but every time one left took another place. According to the Daily Camera newspaper,
double jack drilling was referred to as two-man drilling. One man gripping the steel with his bare hands was known as the shaker. No thanks. His job was to hold the steel in position and then rotate it 90 degrees after every blow from the sledgehammer to help move that rock that had been broken. The other man was the driller, swinging an 8 to 12-pound sledgehammer at the rock chisel being held in the shaker's hands. The driller's job was to strike a firm blow and never miss. Hopefully. All double jack steels were turned out of plain carbon steel. The diameter of the double jack steel could not measure under 7/8 of an inch. Contestants were allowed as many steels as they could drill. On average, they increased 1.5 inches in length per steel. Hammers could not weigh in excess of 12 pounds. Frank Campton, a self-described mining stiff, narrated the contest he joined at Goldfield as a contestant.
Jack and I took great pains to get our steel just right. We sharpened and tempered 20 steel on 2.5-inch charged lengths. Each of us had to select our double jack hammers, long, thin, and small-faced. Hammer and handle weight was limited to 9 pounds by contest regulations. During practice, we got our strokes to 60 per minute.
To win, they decided
to keep sober, but don't celebrate.
A lot of their friends from Tonopah put money on them. Their only competition was a team from Michigan led by Mike Kinsella. But Campton and his mate won with a short inch to spare. The driller was a legend, this Kinsella, and was a good loser, according to Campton, and bought drinks all around. Campton's winning reputation followed him, and years later, someone who had watched the contest pointed to him and said,
"There's one of the stiffs who beat Mike Kinsella. It meant free drinks the rest of the night."
Most miners stayed working class. They labored hard and died young from the toil, conditions, and excess. This song, The Fools of 49, attests to the wearing life. It's a little jaunty, too, so, and it's girl's choice if you feel like dancing.
When gold was found in 48, the people said it was gas, and some were fools enough to think the lumps were only brass. But they soon were satisfied and started off to mine. They bought a ship, came round the Horn in the fall of 49. When they thought of what they had been told, when they started after gold, that they never in this world would make a pile. For the old rotten scows were advertised to sail to New Orleans with passengers that they must come and bail. The ships were crowded more than full, but some hung on behind, and others dived off from the wharf and swam till they were blind.
Boxing. Joe Gans and battling Nelson was an historic fight. Frank Campton was at the lightweight championship on Goldfield on Labor Day 1906. Promoted by Tex Ricard, famous for staging Jack Dempsey's $1 Million Purses, it drew the largest crowd in history to that date, over 8,000. Before the bout, a custom was to read telegrams from fans who could not attend. Gans, a black sports champion, as they referred to athletes back then, had a note read from his mother.
"Joe, the eyes of the world are upon you. You bring back the bacon."
Reported in papers throughout the country, it is now part of everyday lexicon. Gans won the fight after 42 grueling rounds. Campton's first-hand report of this event exclaimed,
"No fight that I had ever seen since has equaled it in any way." Gans was a boxer and Nelson a bruiser.
The bout in which he defeated the Danish-American Nelson, who liked to promote himself by saying,
"I ain't human,"
went 2 hours and 48 minutes, the longest championship fight of the 20th century.
It was a fight from start to finish, and not once did either man let up trying to knock out the other. Gans' boxing was perfect and had Nelson worried. After the 10th round, Gans had the crowd with him booing Nelson. Nelson never was a clean fighter, and he poured it on that day. The thing ended the way it should have when the referee gave Gans the decision in the 42nd round on a foul by Nelson.
Campton had bet on and collected winnings, working up, as he described, a good grub stake. Let's talk about saloons of the day. Coming off shift, a miner could expect to find a saloon nearby. Gambling, drinking, and dancing were the norm. They were also called hurdy-gurdy houses. That is a musical instrument, a kind of hand organ with strings, and all you have to do is crank and it plays a tune. The majority of dance halls used these instruments as pianos were very expensive and hard to get to some of these Arizona outlying communities. The saloons were long, narrow buildings with a bar on one side and gambling and dancing on the other. Cigars were brought in, beer such as the Acme, Buffalo, National. Yet the favorite and most convenient, as it was well preserved, was whiskey. Hard to beat. Cyrus Noble, Old Swan, and Gilt Edge, and it also did the job in a hurry. Whiskey was often sold with romance and seduction on its heels.
Proper women of the day were not even served the beverage.
So to have a label with a beauty suggested much more. For dancing, saloons had girls at the ready. This is interesting, though. Many were not prostitutes, but dime dancers. The dance was free, but the accompanying drink was charged. A roulette table was found in most saloons, along with faro and poker tables where gambling went on 24 hours a day. Many a miner parted his wages, and poker was ever present, as described in the song Jack of Diamonds.
Jack of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds, Jack of Diamonds, and hard to see. Jack of Diamonds, once in time, keep his troubles never mind. Jack of Diamonds is a hard to see.
Prescott's most famous saloon story is about a baby whose mother brought her into the cabinet bar on a cold January night in 1898 with a note saying that the baby was homeless and identified the father as William Bell, that good-for-nothing ne'er-do-well. The cabinet had been a center of activity in Prescott for a quarter century. According to the newspaper The Courier, the mother was
A rather comely young woman.
no fewer than 40 brawny men infected with the empathy of whiskey volunteered to give the infant a home. It was suggested that a gambling game decide her fate, and soon 30 of these men began throwing dice for the rights to the infant. Charles Hicks, the county probate judge, was called in, as in territorial Arizona they handled all adoptions. Judge Hicks
Decided the question by announcing he would take the child himself.
Hicks' wife petitioned her own husband to adopt. And 10 years later, as the Courier recounted in glowing terms,
The little waif of the cabinet saloon has fallen into a good home, enough for any child.
let's talk about brothels. You can find many archival photos of hotels in the Pioneer West. The cooks hold a prominent position as they were much celebrated by the men who led otherwise bleak and hard lives. For two-story hotels and rooming houses, the workers were downstairs along with the saloon and the cafe, and the ladies of, quote, ill fame in front of their rooms. In Tombstone, these ladies were required to apply for business licenses. Johns were often given tokens to use for their services.
And you can see on some of these tokens here, Kate's Place, Whiskey Row, another in Yuma. Muffin must have been really special.
Her own token. Mary Catherine Hornery came to Tombstone with her boyfriend Doc Holliday and opened the town's first brothel. Known there as Kate Elder or Big Nose Kate, she partnered with a woman called Rowdy Kate erected a large tent, ordered barrels of cheap whiskey, and hired several working girls. It wasn't fancy, but men flocked in from all directions. The rule of the house was never to let a man leave with money in his pocket. These scarlet ladies, as they were also called, were known for their charity, opening their houses to the sick and donating money to the destitute. This seemed to be a real act that they carried on in a number of the mining towns. In Tombstone, they paid to build a church. During a skirmish between the 10th Cavalry, also known as the Buffalo Soldiers, and the Mexican Army at the Nogales border, the ladies assisted the wounded, painting red crosses on their bed sheets.
The account also reported that the ladies smiled as they recognized First Sergeant Thomas Jordan.
Tombstone and the Birdcage Theater, the archetypical Arizona house of entertainment. It was said to be named after a popular song of the day, Bird in a Gilded Cage. Think of this as an antique version of Lion Eyes by the Eagles, where city girl marries a rich old man.
A bird in a gilded cage, sung by Harry Anthony at a Sun record.
Feel free to sing along. Used to love those Irish tenors, didn't they?
And there was a woman who passed along the fairest of all the sight. A girl to a lover then softly sighed, there's riches at her command, but he married for wealth, not for love, he cried. Though she lives in a mansion grand,
Here comes the chorus, everybody.
she's only a bird in a gilded cage, a beautiful sight to see. You may think she's happy and free from care. She's not, though she seems to be. It's sad when you think of her wasted life, for you cannot make with age. And her beauty was proud for an old man's gold. He's a bird in a gilded cage.
Just give yourselves a big hand. Really. Or at least polite applause. Billy Hutchinson opened the Birdcage on December 26, 1881. There were 14 bird cages, or cribs, where prostitutes, or as they were also called, soiled doves, entertained their clients as the music played on. It operated continuously 24/7 for the next 8 years. The New York Times wrote that the Birdcage was
the wildest, wickedest night spot between Basin Street and the Barbary Coast.
Interestingly, all prostitutes of Tombstone needed a medical certificate to practice. The local physician, Dr. Goodfellow, that's no joke, checked them weekly to make sure they were free of disease. Those infected were suspended from work until they were treated and released.
Soiled Doves, Prostitution in the Early West by Anne Seagraves, is a fascinating look at the lives of these women. It's a great read.
The longest-running continuous poker game took place 24 hours a day for 8 years, 5 months, and 3 days in the Birdcage's basement. Legend says as much as $10 million changed hands during the marathon. The House kept 10%. Participants included Doc Holliday, you've heard of him, Bat Masterson, who went on to have his own television show, Army Scout, lawman, and buffalo hunter, Tom Sharkey, a boxer who it is said could eat 10 meals in one sitting, and George Hearst, the father of William Randolph Hearst, who financed his son's newspapers. Among the acts in the birdcage was the human fly, an acrobat on a swing with clamps on her wrists and ankles. She ended her act by swinging up and attaching to the ceiling, Cirque du Soleil frontier style. And it's my understanding that they had to replace the human fly from time to time when the clamps did not function properly. Big Minnie was a dancer advertised as 210 pounds of beauty in pink. She doubled as a bouncer. Lotta Crabtree, the wealthiest and most beloved entertainer of the late 19th century, performed at the birdcage. Her brother lived in Tombstone. Wyatt Earp testified for Jack Crabtree in a lawsuit over Lotta's significant will after her death. I think in just under 10 years, Lotta, before her death, amassed almost $7 million, a huge amount back then, of course. Lotta learned jigs, flings, wild polkas, breakdowns, and a whole range of soft shoe dancing.
In her 5 or 6 years of traveling in the mines or playing to small audiences in San Francisco, she had picked up every bold and lively changing step which could provoke a sudden cheer, and danced them with a delicate sprightliness or a rough and romping humor. Her dancing was light as a gossamer, when she wished it to be, or boldly hoydenish. She danced as topsy as a wild Irish boy, as a Cockney. With a Cockney song, she had a Scottish fling and came out as an American sailor with a hornpipe.
She eventually adopted the favorite instrument of minstrelsy and the banjo. This is the only photo of her with her prized banjo. Yes, folks, it all happened in real time, from the high life to low life. Riches, commerce, and the arts converged to create a unique phenomena of the West, from mining camp to town to ghost town and rebirth. Wickenburg, Bisbee, Jerome, Prescott, and others are calling a new miner tourists, scholars, and adventurers. And since it's my show, I think I'll end with a song. We're talking about entertaining. Part of my work on my doctorate was as in the area of ethnomusicology, that is, studying music in a cultural context. So I wrote this song based on a report I'd read about in Sicily. All the songs are in minor keys. Think of the main theme from Godfather. And so that's what this song kind of reflects on. It's called Sicily. If you won't have me here, I want no one. If you won't see me clear, I'll hide the sun. If you won't be my girl, the world is wrong. I'll move to Sicily. They like sad songs. They always lock their gates, hold grudges long past laid, won't loan their motor cars, curse the sea. If this is love, my dear, sing sweet to me. I'll tune my guitar and accompany. They always lock their gates, hold grudges long past late, won't loan their motor cars, and curse the sea. If you won't be my girl, the world is wrong. I'll move to Sicily, they like sad songs. I'll move to Sicily, they like sad songs. All right. And thank you so much for coming, folks. And thanks to Susan and the Arts and Cultural Commission.